Hi, I'm Phil Ball, pastor of Odyssey Christian Church in Jenks, Oklahoma. We're part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and we offer a non-judgmental approach to support your personal journey of faith. After the message, we invite you to keep listening for a presentation from our wonderful band. And if you want to experience worship live, we invite you to find out all the details at www.facebook.com/Odyssey CC. I call it a hologram. That's when you see one piece of it, you see another piece of it. So that any activity in which we choose to engage, whether it's, in this case, golf or cooking or teaching or pulling weeds or whatever it is you like to do, maybe, make signs or something. No, that wouldn't work. But I was working on Steve over there. He didn't get that. Okay. Anything you choose to do, you can learn important life lessons and wisdom about it, because for thousands of years people have been doing stuff and learning a bunch of stuff. And once you kind of get into it, you kind of get a sense of that. So that any activity that really attracts you in your internals, you're willing to spend time and money working on it because you're just interested in it. I think... for Sammy, even though he's walking out the door, that'd be playing drums. But, it's just, that's where the kids go over there, so it's all good. But, whatever you do, once you get into it, you begin to learn a bunch of stuff about all of life because of just that one activity, and it draws to you. And so when you say, I've got to try that, there's something about that. So that when we look at these objects and a thing called movies and stuff, they're like portals or venues, or they just open up stuff, because what they do is they show us a piece of life. That's the reason the Bible keeps selling so much, in my opinion, because I consider it to be a really difficult book to read. But the fact that people continually are fascinated by it is because it represents all these stories and all this stuff of human experience interacting with God's divine power. And all of that happens in all of our life. And hopefully we'll be able to see that. But because in this case, the portal or the venue that we're going to look at is a game of golf. But this is a work of art. And it's all movies are work of art. And like all art, some of it attracts you and some of it doesn't. I know that my first experiences in college with art was we were required to go spend a certain amount of time at museums and places that had fine art. And I can remember feeling, why are people painting pictures of fruit? I mean, that was what came out of my heart. It's kind of like, why don't they just take a photograph? It's a lot clearer than what I'm seeing here. And then as I got older, all of a sudden I figured out that they were attempting to take the sense of spirit quality that they got from the fruit in its color, in its shape, and maybe even something they felt from it that was abstract, and they were trying to portray that with oil and color and setting and where it was placed. And I thought, there's more to it than just taking a picture of fruit. So that's part of what I want to get into, that it was less a picture and more of an expression leading to a spiritual experience. And the great Spanish painter, anyhow, some people think he's great, and I'm one of them, Pablo Picasso, said in an interview, quote, "We all know that art is not truth. Art is a lie that makes us realize truth, at least the truth that is given us to understand." So as we begin this series using movies, I trust that you will be given truth as you might understand it. Okay, so here's the deal. The story begins with a narrator, and the narrator is Hardy Greaves. And little Hardy is represented as an old guy by Jack Lemmon. And this is actually the last movie Jack Lemmon ever made before he died. And And he starts off, you see Jack Lemmon on the golf course, and he's hitting, and then he has a heart attack, and then he's narrating, and he talks about this is the 5th time he's had a heart attack on the golf course, and he just lays down until he feels better, and then he gets back up. And his wife has already preceded him, and he's not too anxious about anything. And then he begins to tell this story about Randolph Juna and Bagger Vance and all these things. And the setting is Savannah, Georgia. Anybody ever been to Savannah? Anybody? All right. So you know what you're dealing with the deep south. Okay, this is not North Georgia. I went to seminary in North Georgia, and it was a whole lot more liberal than South Georgia. Okay, so we didn't know about that. But this is Savannah, Georgia, 1928 to 1931, somewhere in that block of time. And Hardy says in this narration, how I wanted to be just like Randolph Juna. And it centers around these characters. And my focus today really is about how those activities around that game, how those characters around that game expose the challenges and the truth that we all can endure and transfer into our lives. So that the golf hero and our young narrator will reap benefits of this truth as they're set free to experience their authentic life in what I call the kingdom of heaven, which is not a place as much as it's a way of consciousness. And so in the movie, they center around what is their authentic swing. And so you'll hear that word again. And it doesn't have to do with dancing like you would in Oklahoma in the 30s, but it has to do with hitting the golf ball. And so as we've all chosen our activity, our game, our field of dreams, our area of struggle, our area of reward and conflict, to which we learn about our authentic swing of life, this one is around a game of golf. Whether it be for us, parenting or building or playing or selling or cleaning or doctoring or teaching or making signs, we all kind of get into that. All right, so Randolph Juna, as a young man at 16 or 17, won the Southern Golf National Open, and it was just amazing kinds of stuff that he did. And so he had a legend even as a young man. And it says he won just about everything, including the heart of Adele Invergordon. They have the most interesting names in this book, you know. And Randolph Juna's reputation as this young champion golfer around a hero, and it was cemented. And this was the daughter of the richest man in Savannah. And in 1916, there was this image of great future and great possibilities. And then all of a sudden, World War I comes to America. And in World War I, everyone believed it was Juna's destiny to lead the young men of Savannah into battle. That's how the narration goes. And he was a captain in the army in World War I, and he got into a battle. And he comes out of that battle totally traumatized because his entire company was wiped out in that battle except him. And so he comes back with a post-traumatic stress disorder, big time, and he lives this shadowy life as a drunk and as just a kind of a ne'er-do-well, even though evidently he had enough money and house and everything to be okay. But he does that for a long time, and like for 10 years. And the movie never tells you all that, but really it starts happening in the late 1920s. And you know World War I was over 1918, 1919 in that block of time. And so he spent a lot of time out of society in his own world. The text says that Juna disappeared hoping to forget and to be forgotten. So 12 years later, when the Great Depression finally hit Savannah, it hit Adele and her dad, because her dad had this vision of making a great Crew Island golf resort, and he spent his entire fortune, and it was super top class, high grade, great golf experience, but nobody knew about it. And then the Depression hit, and her father's response to that depression was to shoot himself, and that's what he did. And Adele's response was just exactly the opposite. Her response was to step up to the situation, to recover her family's lost fortune by doing a turnaround. And her idea of a turnaround was to have the biggest, best golf challenge that could ever happen, exhibition match, between Bobby Jones and Walter Hagen. And the upstanding men, including judges and bankers of the day, kept coming to her and saying, "This will never work. You're crazy. You can't pull this off." Well, this is a woman of the South. And she turns on all her charm and goes to Bobby Jones and seduces him into playing, saying that she remembers that the last time that he and Walter Hagen played golf, Walter Hagen won by 10 strokes. And Bobby Jones goes, "I think I'll play this contest." And then she goes to Walter Hagen and says, "Bobby Jones is playing, and we need to get you to play." And so that keeps going, and they got all this volume. And she sold everything she had to raise the $10,000 reward for who won this thing. And she would put that resort on the map, and all the people in the United States who would begin to see what was going on after all the press coverage would begin to use their money to come to Crew Island and experience the golf thing and save it all. So she needs, the local town council, they say, "No, you can't do this, bring in all these foreigners." I got to tell you a story. Bringing all these people, they're going to drive in our streets and walk on our grass. That was actually in the movie. It was so good because I served a small church south of Oklahoma City, and they had a resale store that one of the members of the church did just out of her own imagination. She has a resale store, and she's going to take all the profits from that and spend it on the church building. And so she did, and they bought new carpet for the kitchen with this money from the resale store. And then it just so happened in the turn of events in human history in this little town, they needed a place for a polling place. And I suggested they use our fellowship hall because it's a civic thing to do. And she said, "No, we're not going to have those people walking on my carpet." So they didn't. And so I left. And not because I had to, because I was finished. If they couldn't get what I was about, that was my third year of ministry there, and if they were not going to pay any attention to the fact that God was about that, then they could find somebody else. But anyhow, the point is that these local folks says, "We got to have somebody from Savannah to do this." And little 10-year-old Hardy, just stands up, and later on he says, "I don't know what caused me to do this." He says, "What about Juna? Juna can do it." And they all decided that they'd give that a try. So that's what there went on. So Hardy grows up, and he tries to convince Juna, and that's the picture you got there. He's sitting around a table of a bunch of ne'er-do-wells, and they've been gambling, and they got him a knee-high. And they have been drinking and gambling. And if you haven't seen this movie, there's this great little scene in there where Juna is saying, "Well, you know, Hardy, what alcohol does is it helps you out." He says, "Did you know that every time you take a drink of alcohol, there's 50,000 brain cells that go away?" And he says, "The first drink, why, all the sad brain cells go, and you start laughing about everything. And the second drink, all the smart brain cells go, and you start saying anything that comes to your mind. And the fourth brain cell, the third or fourth drink, you drink that, and it says all your hearing brain cells go away. So then you can just yell and loud and say anything you want to do." It says, "But you know the hardest brain cells to kill? Those are the memory brain cells." Because he'd been trying to kill memory brain cells for a long time. And so he tells you all about that. So he resists little Hardy's persuasion, and then he gets up and goes into another part of the house, and all these civic leaders are sitting there waiting, and they try to convince him and hammer him over the head and all this kind of stuff, and he resists them. And then Adele shows up, and she uses her powers of persuasion. But the problem with this is, in my opinion, is that Adele still loves him. They had a relationship before he went off to war. And she still loves him, so she can't do her tricks on him. She gets all hooked up in that relationship. And so she kind of backs off. And at that point, he sends everybody away. He sends Hardy home, Adele, all the civic leaders, and they're out of the house. And that's where we need to watch a piece of video. Okay, now that, I wanted you to see that because of a bunch of stuff. Now, here again, it's what is that authentic swing, which really has to do with our being. It has to do with who we are. It has to do with our connection with God. It has to do with our expression and extension of everything. And I have to call your attention to the character of Bagger. I would like for you to consider Bagger as an angel teacher, as somebody who shows up in the darkness and then begins to interact. He doesn't come with a great big intellectual routine of things. Learn these things. We're going to have a test on them next week. It's a relational teaching. It's an involved teaching. First of all, we talked about it being the American Deep South in 1930. And here is an African American showing up, interacting with this young nobleman of the South who is in disrepair. And one of the cool teaching experiences of this is Junah doesn't bring any arrogance. He doesn't bring self-esteem to it. He doesn't say, "What are you telling me about that? You know, being the African American that you are. You're so uppity." He doesn't have any of that to get past in order to listen. Because I'm convinced if you read scriptural text, you find that the angels that God sent, including Jesus himself, don't fit our expectations. Jesus was the no Messiah. He didn't fit any of the expectations that the people of his day had. And it's like they show up in our lives and they push us. The first thing out of Bagger's mouth was, "Oh, no, sir. I was standing right in front of you where it was safe because you couldn't hit the ball straight on a Sunday." You know what I mean? It's like to start off with. And I know that there are some folks, if somebody were to say something of that character to you, they go, "Why, you're just being mean." Nope. Doesn't have anything to do with being mean. It has to do with dealing with the truth. And the reason I titled this sermon having to do with the truth setting you free is because I'm believing that that's what happens in my life, that's what happens in other people's life, when we have these angels that show up in the dark and surprise us and don't fit any of our expectations and then push us in areas that we need to be pushed. And so Jonah works through this. He's not offended. He's recognized at some level that there's somebody special here helping him out. Now, I'm hoping that some of you who have been exposed to the traditional church and the liturgies of the traditional church recognize the words of the Gloria as he placed down the balls. "Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be." He put them balls down. All that is, all that was, all that will be. He's taken it out of that specific event and having him connect to all that was. And if you watch the movie closely, you'll find there's a couple of things where Junah and Adele are having a intimate fight. Fights are intimate, they can be really helpful. And he says, "Adele, there's nothing I can do about 12 years ago." And she says, "It was just a moment ago." To where all of a sudden time is erased in these things. And that's something that happens. And as it moves through this whole thing, it touches. And he begins to regain hope as Bagger is his caddy. And he agrees to play. And then they have this big, large public ceremony in which all the golfers are introduced. Bobby Jones, Walter Hagen, and Randolph Junah. And then that freaks Junah out. It's too much pressure. and he starts packing his stuff, and he's heading out of town. I can't deal with all this. The PTSD is ticking in. And in true angel form, Bagger does nothing to stop him. Does nothing to stop him. Just says, well, could I have those shoes there? I've been needing some shoes. You're not going to need them. You're heading out of town. And it, in a sense, just helps him out. And so he runs out, throws his stuff in his car, and he heads out of town. And everybody in town is going, Judah, how are you, man? We're so glad you're playing. And about 50 people are doing that. And pretty soon, a thunderstorm comes up, and everybody's hanging around his car. And he realizes that it's bigger than him. And he is supported beyond any intelligence, beyond anything. And he turns around and figures out that he can play. And it's like God will allow us to run away until we decide to stop and face down the circumstances of our own blocks. The only question that we have to do is, when will we decide that? Moses at the burning bush had to turn around and go back to the place he ran from because he had just killed some Egyptians and got out of Dodge before they could catch him. Okay? Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times, met him in his resurrected state and had to say, yes, Lord, I love you. And Jesus would say, feed my sheep, and rebonded him back into relationship. He was ready. Paul on the road to Damascus was struck, and he decided he was ready. We all have that decision in our lives of, when are we going to turn around and make good choices? When are we going to make choices that bring life? And so all of that goes, and a side lesson, in my opinion, is that we all live in a community. We all need our community. If it hadn't been for all those folks slowing Jonah down and stopping him and congratulating him and celebrating his life, that he may have kept on going. And finally, though, Jonah knew that if he had any chance to win the tournament, he had to come to terms with his demons. And like most of us, he mistakenly identified his problems as outside of himself. Like Miss Adele was one of his problems, and Bagger was one of his problems, and the golf game was one of his problems. But in reality, the problems are mostly internal. And those are just ways that we get confronted by the people that love us enough to be a royal pain and to push on us. And I'm not talking about being mean. I'm talking about pushing us. Our demons are almost always inside of us. That's what Christ knew when he took those legion of demons outside of the Jezreel demoniac and sent them into the pigs. You got to get them out of you. It's hard on the pig farmers, but sometimes you just have to pay the price. So that's where we go. So Jonah started working on his authentic swing, and so I'm gonna talk about some of the dialogue that Bagger has here, and just let it wash over you, and just see if you can pull anything out of it for you. Yep, inside each and every one of us is one true, authentic swing. Now, we're not talking about golf. Something we was born with, something that's ours and ours alone, something that can't be taught to you or learned, something that's got to be remembered. Over time, the world can rob us of that swing. It gets buried inside us under all of our wouldas and couldas and shouldas. Some folk even forget what their swing was ever like. So that as Bagger and Jonah play the tournament, Jonah's forced to address the questions that Bagger can help him with as they move through the experience, the clarity, and all that kind of stuff, so that we come to grips with that in our lives as we continue. And as the golf match of our lives progresses, we experience and encounter things that push us. They reveal the state of our inner development. They reveal where we are and how we are. And as the match progressed, if you ever watch this movie and sit down and watch it, you'll notice that we started off with failing and the bad shots and all that. The first round or two of the golf tournament, he was like 12 shots behind because he just kept messing up. And then all of a sudden, he got a vision, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. And then he began to hit great. And then he went from there to overconfidence. Okay? So he thought he could do anything. And then he went from overconfidence to crisis because he couldn't do anything. And then he went from crisis to recovery. And it's that bouncing back and forth, that unclean, messy bouncing back and forth. And then one of the last things I want us to look at is connect that. And Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, they were in the tournament. I'm trying to make you make sense of all this together. If you continue in my word, keep swinging the clubs, learning the stuff, you are truly my disciples. Now, y'all golfers, y'all can use this if you need justification with somebody to do this. And you will know the truth about me, yourselves, life, and everything, and the truth will make you free. The angels, like Bagger, will tell us the truth, and when we are ready to listen, and then they'll continually help us. And this is one of the ways that he did it. He got Junah off to the side, Bagger did, and he said, watch Bobby Jones. He's going to see one shot that's his authentic shot. He's going to look at the field. He's going to see what he needs to do with that field. And this is the dialogue. There's a perfect shot out there trying to find each and every one of us. All we got to do is get ourselves out of its way to let it choose us. Can't see that flag as some dragon you got to slay. You got to look with soft eyes. See the place where the tides and the seasons and the turning of the earth all come together, where everything that is becomes one. You got to seek that place with your soul, Junah. Seek it with your hands. Don't just think about it. Feel it. Your hands are wiser than your head is ever going to be. Now, I can't take you there, Junah. I just hope I can help you find a way. Just you, the ball, the flag, and all you are. Kind of reminded me of an old gospel tune that Dan and Dennis did 4 or 5 weeks ago. Softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling. It's not pushing it. It's not grabbing it. It's not jerking it. Now I can tell you one thing. The Junah you was before World War I, you ain't never going to be again. Ever. That's all I'm saying. But you can stand on everything you've learned and reinvent yourself as a new creature of God each day, and who knows what you may become. And this is what I'm going to leave you with. It's a dialogue between Bagger and Junah. Bagger. What I'm talking about is a game that can't be won, only played. Junah. But you don't understand. Bagger. I don't need to understand. Ain't a soul on this entire earth ain't got a burden to carry he don't understand. You ain't alone in that, but you've been carrying this one long enough. It's time to go on. Lay it down, Junah. I don't know how. Bagger, you got a choice. You can stop or you can start. Junah, start. Bagger, walking. Junah, where? Bagger, right back to where you've always been, and then stand there, still, real still. And remember, Junah, it's too long ago. Bagger, oh no, sir. It was just a moment ago. Time for you to come on out of the shadows, Junah. Time for you to choose. I can't. Yes, you can. But you ain't alone. I'm right here with you. I've been here all along. Now play the game, your game. The one that only you was meant to play. The one that was given to you when you come into this world. Are you ready? Strike that ball, Junah. Don't hold nothing back. Give it everything. Now's the time. Let yourself remember. Remember your swing. That's right, Junah. Settle yourself. Let's go. Now is the time. Let us pray. Lord Jesus, we come to you in each moment, living in that moment as if it were 1,000 years in the past and 1,000 years in the future. And we come before you knowing that you are with us, knowing that you are guiding us and encouraging us and challenging us beyond our self-doubts. We come to you knowing that your love will carry us through all that is, all that ever will be. as it has carried us through all that was. And we give you thanks. Amen.
I walked down to the river, stood on the shore. It seemed like the devil's always trying to get in my door. And just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, here it came again, my friend. He keeps sending me angels from on high. He keeps sending me angels to teach me to fly. He keeps sending me angels, so sweet and true. He keeps sending me angels just like you. As I stand on this mountain, face to the wind, amazed by the number of times I have seen, and the countless enemies who should have been friends. Oh, here he comes again, my friend. He keeps sending me angels, here they come flying. Keeps sending me angels, teach me to fly. He keeps sending me angels, so sweet and true. He keeps sending me angels, just like some say that it's coming, I say it's already here. The love that's among us, through the joy and the fear. And when I look in your eyes, everything is so clear. Oh, my friend, yeah, here he comes again. And he keeps sending me angels from up on high. He keeps sending me angels to teach me to fly. He keeps sending me angels, so real and true. He keeps sending me angels, just like